By May 1946, inside the grey walls of Landsberg Prison, one of the last Nazi war criminals condemned by the Dachau Trials sat waiting for dawn, a dawn that would not bring freedom, but the gallows. His name was Dr. Fritz Hintermayer, an SS physician whose medical degree had been turned into a weapon, whose experiments and selections had left trails of agony through the camps of Mauthausen and Dachau. He was 43 years old, calm and eerily polite to his guards. In the final hours before his execution, he asked for coffee, wrote a short letter to his wife, and requested a cigarette. The guard who brought it to him later said, "He thanked me like a gentleman. You'd never guess what he had done." Fritz Hintermayer had once been respected, intelligent, disciplined, a man of science. Born in 1903 in Bavaria, he studied medicine at Munich University and graduated with honors. His early career seemed ordinary. He worked as a physician in the army during the early 1930s, but his ambition soon outgrew simple medicine. He joined the Nazi Party in 1937 and later the SS Medical Corps. His oath was no longer to life, but to ideology. When the war began, he was assigned to Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria, one of the harshest in the entire Nazi system. Its granite quarries consumed prisoners daily. Men were beaten, starved, and worked to death under the slogan Vernichtung durch Arbeit, extermination through labor. Dr. Hintermayer's task was to keep the system running, not to heal, but to select who could still work and who should die. Witnesses remembered him moving through the infirmary in a spotless white coat, clipboard in hand, boots polished. To the sick and the dying, his arrival meant one of two things: a brief reprieve or the bullet that ended their suffering. He smiled when he chose. One survivor said, "He smiled the same way when he condemned." He conducted so-called medical evaluations, examining emaciated prisoners and marking them with colored chalk. Red meant rest, blue meant the gas chamber, green meant labor. His selections were quick, clinical, and final. "He looked at you like a specimen," another survivor said. "Not a person, not a man, just meat." By 1944, as the Reich began to crumble, Hintermayer was transferred to Dachau. There, the SS had established a network of medical research facilities, grotesque laboratories disguised as hospitals. He worked alongside other camp doctors conducting hypothermia experiments, altitude tests, and sterilization trials on prisoners. Some victims were submerged in freezing water until they stopped breathing. Others were exposed to decompression chambers that ruptured their lungs. Hintermayer supervised these experiments. He took notes, recorded pulse rates, and observed death as though it were a natural process. When prisoners screamed, he remained silent. When they died, he signed off the paperwork with the word "erledigt," completed. As the Allies approached in April 1945, Dachau fell into chaos. Guards fled, records were burned, and corpses piled up faster than they could be buried. Hintermayer attempted to escape, disguised as a medic tending to the wounded, but he was recognized by survivors who pointed him out to the US soldiers entering the camp. One of them, a Czech prisoner, shouted, "That is the doctor who killed with his pen." The Americans arrested him on the spot. He was taken to a detention center in Augsburg, then transferred to Dachau, which had been turned into a makeshift prison for captured SS personnel. Within months, he found himself facing trial before an American military tribunal. The Mauthausen and Dachau trials, as they became known, began in late 1945. They were among the most extensive post-war prosecutions, with hundreds of SS officers, guards and camp doctors accused of crimes against humanity. Hintermayer's name appeared among them. During the proceedings, witnesses described the horrors he had overseen, the experiments, the selections, the mercy injections of phenol given to prisoners who were no longer useful. One survivor testified he killed without hate. He was proud of his efficiency. He believed he was a scientist. When asked if he admitted his crimes, Hintermayer denied everything. "I was only following orders," he said. "I did what every military doctor must do: maintain discipline and prevent chaos." When the prosecution pressed him about his experiments, he claimed they were medically necessary for aviation survival. The courtroom fell silent. The judges had heard that phrase before, the same justification repeated by dozens of Nazi doctors. It was no defense. The verdict came on May 13, 1946. Dr. Fritz Hintermayer was found guilty of murder, torture, and medical crimes against humanity. The sentence, death by hanging. The execution would take place the next morning at Landsberg Prison, the same prison where Hitler had once written Mein Kampf. That night, the guards observed him writing steadily for hours. No one knew what he wrote. He folded the letters carefully, sealing them with trembling hands. Then he sat still, smoking his last cigarette down to the filter. At dawn on May 14th, the guards entered his cell. Hintermayer rose calmly, his face pale but composed. He put on his glasses, straightened his collar and said, "It is time, yes?" When told he could have a priest, he shook his head. "No," he said, "I will die as I lived, by reason." He was escorted down a short corridor to the execution chamber. The air smelled faintly of oil and wood, and the sound of boots echoed on the floor. American soldiers, officers and reporters waited silently. A military chaplain stood by, head bowed. Hintermayer's posture was straight, almost defiant. When asked for his last words, he said, "I have nothing to confess. I served my country faithfully. History will understand." At precisely 9 minutes past 9, the black hood was placed over his head. The rope was adjusted. The hangman stepped back. The lever was pulled. The drop was short. The sound was sharp. His body jerked once, then hung motionless. The doctor, who had spent years watching others die now, met his own end in seconds. The witnesses signed the documents. His body was taken down, photographed, and buried in an unmarked grave with the other executed war criminals. His letters were never released. Those who attended the hanging said there was no sense of triumph, only relief. One American officer later wrote, "There was no vengeance in it, only the quiet certainty that the world had one less monster wearing a doctor's coat." For the survivors of Mauthausen and Dachau, the news spread quickly. Many felt nothing, some wept, others whispered prayers for the dead. A former prisoner said, "He died quickly. His victims took hours, but at least for once he could not look away." Fritz Hintermayer's death closed the story of one of the many doctors who had betrayed medicine for murder. He was not mad, not possessed, only obedient, educated, and willing to turn science into suffering. His calm, his composure, his lack of remorse were the most terrifying things about him. In the end, he died as he had lived, precise, calculated, without emotion. But his name remains as a warning of what happens when intelligence serves ideology instead of humanity. History doesn't forget, it only waits to be retold. Subscribe for more untold stories from the darkest chapters of history.